Hey guys, in this video we're just going to be going through a breakdown of your science exam. So your exam is going to be on the 27th of May, and it's going to be the same exam for the Flamingos and the Parrots. Now, if you guys want, and if the teachers want, then you can sort out the scheduling so that you guys are writing it together. I don't really care. I'm going to make it short enough that you can write it in your own individual classes. So if you want the Flamingos and Parrots, if you guys want to be combined for the exam and then all collectively have English or whatever, then that's fine with me. You'll probably finish with lots of time to spare. But if you want to do it on your own in your individual classes, that's fine too. It should be something that you can finish in one period. So you can do it in your own classes or you can do it together, but you don't need to join up 2 periods for it. So the format of the exam, I did mention this before I left, it's going to be entirely multiple choice, okay? Now, because it's on the 27th of May, that leaves only one more science class after that for you guys to have them marked and returned. So for the ease of marking, I'm going to, that's why it's all multiple choice, is that way whoever's marking it, I'm happy to mark them, but if one of your other teachers ends up marking them, it's just multiple choice, so they just need to know all the letters. It'll also be a little bit of a paper saver for you guys. So it's going to be 50 multiple choice questions. It's going to be on Monday, May 27th. So at the time of recording, today is the 12th of May. I don't know when you guys are going to see this, but basically your exam is going to be on the 27th of May, just in your regular class. I had previously told Miss Angela the 28th, but that's because I thought your science class was still on Tuesdays. But your science class is now Monday and Wednesday, as I understand it. So it will be on that Monday, the 27th, and then I will post one final video for that last class on the Wednesday. I don't know, again, I don't know when you guys are going to see this video, so if you happen to finish this before the end of class, you can just start studying. I'll make more videos after this, but you can just start studying these topics for the exam. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to go through unit by unit what you're going to be expected to know. And one thing you should know is that this is going to be fairly heavily focused on astronomy, and while I haven't written it here, also maybe a little bit more on geology, just because that first geology test was a little bit shaky. So these two units you should know a lot about. I'm not so worried about biology or chemistry or physics. You guys did well on those 3 tests. So make sure you study your astronomy stuff and your geology stuff. But I'm going to go through unit by unit in case you guys can't read this. So the first thing is we did biology at the start of the school year. So I'm going to try and keep the exam in chronological order. So the first section on the exam should be just biology. And it's just going to basically be on some organelles, parts of the cell, and their functions. Okay, so we talked about, I think at least with the flamingos, I think we talked about like 13 or so organelles. I might have that number wrong, but just know the organelles and some of their functions. I won't expect you to know all of them, because in a testing situation, you forget things, you get confused. Oh, was it a chromosome or a ribosome? Which one? It's something ending in some. So don't memorize all of them. I'm not going to ask you stuff on more than like 6 or 7 of them maybe. So if we studied 13, you can try to memorize all 13. Maybe you already have memorized all 13 organelles and their functions, but if you only remember like 6 or 7, that's okay. I'm going to ask less than the total. So that's it for biology. If you know the organelles and their functions, that pretty much covers the majority of what we did in our biology unit, and it was a long time ago, so I don't want to go in super specific detail just because it's, you guys will forget stuff and it's harder to communicate with, oh, what about this section, that section. Just the organelles and their functions for biology, and you guys did well on that test from my recollection as a whole. So I'm not too worried about that. The next unit was chemistry, and the first point I've written here is drawing atoms. Now, this whole exam is multiple choice, so instead of having you guys draw atoms, maybe what I'll do is I will make diagrams of atoms, like the Lewis dot diagrams or the Bohr-Rutherford diagrams. So basically, if you've forgotten, so like you've got the nucleus in the middle, and then you've got, you know, your electrons as dots around this ring on the outside, and then maybe you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the outside of that, something like that. So I'll give you this kind of drawing of an atom with some electrons in their orbitals around it, and I'll ask you things like, is this diagram correct, or what element is this? Things like that. Based on the number of electrons in this diagram, how many protons should there be? Things like that. Not overly difficult stuff for the most part. And the second section for chemistry was ionic and covalent bonding. And so if you remember, that's the two different types of bonding between metals and nonmetals, and then between two nonmetals. So one of them was where you had your two atoms with the diagrams drawn, and you had an arrow saying that this atom is donating its electron to the other atom. But then covalent bonding was the one where you had to draw the bubble, that these two atoms are sharing these electrons. So hopefully that jogs your memory. If not, go digging in your chemistry notes, because we covered both of these topics, and that's all that you're going to be tested on for chemistry. The third unit we did was geology. It lasted for quite a while. We went from November to like January with this one. There's a lot I could test you on here, and it's like I said at the beginning, it's probably going to be quite extensive compared to biology and chemistry, at least. So the first thing you're going to want to know is the classification of rocks. You're going to want to know the three types of rocks: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. You're also going to want to know, maybe not memorize the rock cycle, like you don't have to memorize that because I haven't written that here, but to get an understanding of how it works, that any rock that melts and then cools and solidifies becomes an igneous rock. It doesn't matter what it was before that. So if you look at the rock cycle, I'm not asking you to memorize the rock cycle, I'm asking you to understand the rock cycle. So you should know that, oh, okay, any rock or any material that's eroded and then solidifies through weathering, erosion, deposition, cementation, that is always going to be a sedimentary rock. So things like that. I want you to understand how igneous rocks form, how metamorphic rocks form, and so on. All right, the second thing I can test you on for that unit is plate tectonics. So we talked a little bit about plate tectonics, the different types of plate boundaries, things like that. You know, which, if I give you a diagram or if I describe a situation, you have to be able to tell me, is it a convergent boundary, is it a divergent boundary, transform, which one? So things like that. The third one, geologic time. Similar to when you had your geology test, I'm not going to ask you to list all the eons in order or list all the eras in order. I don't care. Not about that kind of thing. We have textbooks for that. What I will expect you to know is, you know, a couple of notable things from certain events. So like, oh, when did the dinosaurs go extinct? What era did the dinosaurs live in? What era are we living in now? What was the super eon called? There was only one super eon that we talked about. What was it called? What brought about the end of this period and the start of that period? Things like that. So similar to the stuff we talked about on the test, and I'll try to keep it simple enough because it's been a little while since we did geology. And then the last thing is relative dating. If you remember, that was not the same as absolute dating. So absolute dating was the stuff with like radioactive decay, that you have, you know, a certain amount of carbon-14 or uranium in a material, and measuring how much of it has decayed into something else tells you the age of it. That's absolute dating. I'm not testing you on absolute dating. I'm testing you on relative dating. That was the thing like superposition, older rocks on the bottom, younger rocks on the top, stuff like that. Cross-cutting relationships where a crack in the rock must be older, must be younger than the rock itself, things like that. So that's what I'm going to be testing you on for geology. So you should know classification of rocks, plate tectonics, geologic time, and relative dating. And like I said, this unit is going to be reasonably extensively covered on the exam just because of how the geology test went. Alright, now the next one we did down here, sorry it's kind of all over the place, we did biology, chemistry, geology, and then down here, physics. You guys did well on the physics test, you guys understood the physics unit. Because it's multiple choice, I'm not going to make it very mathematical, so all I'm asking you to know are Newton's laws, which for the most part are not very mathematical, and energy, so different types of energy, and maybe the equations for energy. It's not going to be super mathematical, like calculate this and that, but you know, which one is the equation for kinetic energy. I might have one or two calculation questions in there, but it won't be very heavy. So try and understand those, but it's not going to be too difficult. I'm going to be aiming, because it's going to be the same exam for the Flamingos and the Parrots, I'm going to be aiming to set the level of the exam somewhere in between. So it might be a smidge more challenging for the Parrots, but then a smidge easier for the Flamingos. So I'm going to try and have some easier sections and maybe some harder sections. But I'm also thinking I might add in some bonus questions as well, just because, you know, exams are stressful situations and you guys are having to deal with these, you know, remote lessons, these from 4,000 kilometers away. So I'm gonna try and, you know, be lenient with the marking and all of that, and with the questions that I give you as well. So for physics you just need to know Newton's laws and energy. And then the last unit we did, which has been in the video lessons, was astronomy, which is also going to be fairly extensively covered. And the reason it's going to be covered more extensively than the other units is just because we haven't had a test on it. So I haven't been there with you guys for most of the astronomy unit, so I can't properly gauge from where I am how well you guys are understanding the material. So I want to test you on astronomy for sure, and then all the rest of it is kind of like a side bonus. I want to test you on astronomy because you haven't had a test on it, and I want to test you on geology to make sure that you remember the stuff that you studied the second time before the retest. But the rest of them, I'm not too worried. So for the astronomy unit, you should know some of the facts about the planets. So things like which one is the hottest one, which one rotates on its side, why is Neptune blue, things like that. So you should know those things. I'm not going to make it super specific details that you need to know based on people's presentations. So it's not going to be like which space probe flew past Neptune or things like that, or you know, which what was the name of the first lander on Venus. I'm not going to ask you things like that. I'm going to ask you things like which is the hottest planet, what's, you know, which of these is closest to the sun, which of these is the largest or the smallest, how many moons do they have, things like that. What's their axial tilt? Not so much on the moon bit, because we didn't really talk about that. So you should know those facts about the planets. The second thing you should know is the life and death of a star. And here I want to clarify something. Miss Angela sent me a message that one of you asked, can a massive star, like the really, really big ones, turn into a white dwarf at the end of its life? And I said yes, because I missed the bit about massive. I was in class at the time, and so when I was reading that text, I read it too quickly, and I missed the fact that the question was about massive stars, not just any stars. So no, massive stars, at least for the most part, the accepted answer on the test will be that sun-like stars, low-mass stars, turn into white dwarfs at the end of their lives, but those really massive ones, the collapse of their core is so violent that a neutron star or a black hole is kind of more probable. They just don't have, for white dwarfs, the physics of how it works, that you get a white dwarf, is different from the physics of how you get a neutron star, and it depends on the mass of the star. So like there's different forces at play that can prevent a neutron star from forming, that can prevent the core from collapsing so violently that it becomes a neutron star or a black hole, and those properties are different for low mass and high mass stars. So just a clarification for that, no, low mass stars become white dwarfs, high mass stars become neutron stars or black holes. All right, so life and death of a star. So you should understand how stars form with that kind of the swirling gas and dust that condenses to form a star. You should have a vague understanding of what fusion is. We didn't really talk about it in detail, so there might not be a question on it, but it could be somewhere in the life and death of a star. I don't want that word to trip you up. You should understand, when stars die, what happens, which part of the star is collapsing, what's happening to the rest of the material, what's left over at the end. Is it a white dwarf, a black dwarf? What's the difference between those two? Is it a neutron star, a black hole? What makes a black hole black? Things like that. So that's life and death of stars. Next thing you should know is phases of the moon. So we talked about, the moon, how it appears as it moves through its orbit. And I believe that was in the same lesson that we talked about the motion of the planets. I was going to test you on that, but I'm not going to test you on the motion of the planets with like the conjunction and opposition and quadrature and all of that. So you don't have to worry about that. Just focus on the phases of the moon bit. So you should know the names of the different phases and kind of what they look like. I won't penalize you if you get like a waxing crescent and a waning crescent wrong, because they're basically the same picture, just reflected. You might have the right half of the moon illuminated or the left half. So I'll just ask you if I have a picture of a crescent moon, I'll ask you, is this a crescent, a full moon, a gibbous, or a new moon? Something like that. So you don't have to know the waxing and waning bit, but you should know the names of those sort of shapes for the moon. And if you have a new moon and a full moon, which comes in between? Is it you should know that waxing means that the illumination of the moon is increasing, and waning means the illumination is decreasing. But it won't be very hard, the bit on phases of the moon. And then the last thing will be on the most recent lesson, which we covered, which is on exoplanets. You should know what an exoplanet is. You should know what the habitable zone is. You should know what the Doppler wobble and transit photometry. You should understand, not in full detail what they are, but you should understand why they favor bigger planets, for instance. So just go through those videos. If you don't understand something, let me know. Send me an email, leave a comment or whatever, and we can talk about it. And that brings me to the last point before I let you guys go. A review of specific material. If you guys could, for this course or for those of you that are in my math class as well, if you have a list of things that you specifically want to review, that you know ahead of time that you want to go through, could you give a list of those things to your teacher to give to me, so that when it comes time for that live stream for math, I know sort of what I'm getting into ahead of time, so I can maybe prepare something ahead of time. And for those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about with this live stream, for my math class ahead of their math exam, I'm going to be having 1 or 2 hour long, maybe even 2 hour long, depending on how much time I have, review sessions through YouTube live stream. So I'll start a live stream and you guys can comment in real time, I want to review this, and then we'll do it on the board. So I'm offering that to math, and I'm also offering that to science. I'm offering that to both science classes here. If you have something you want to review from this material, make a list of it, send it to your teacher so that they can let me know what they want to go over, or what they want me to go over in that review. And also let me know, actually I'll decide, I haven't quite decided yet because of the math review and my assignments and stuff. I don't know when is the best time for this, but let me know when you want the review, if it works for you. I finish classes at 9:30 in the morning on Fridays, and I'm fairly free Friday afternoons and evenings, depending on how my assignments are going. I might be free Friday evening all the way through to Sunday evening at various times in there. So let me know what times work best for you guys for a review session. If you want a review session, do you want 1? Do you want 2? Do you want 2 1-hour-long review sessions or 1 2-hour-long? All of that stuff. You guys think about it, decide amongst yourselves. Once I have a better idea of how my time is looking, I will let you guys know what options I have available. But what I can tell you now is it'll probably be best to have it the weekend right before your exam. So that would be the weekend of, I guess, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th would be the weekend in question. So for those of you in my math class, just a heads up, your exam will already be done by this point, so your review, if I'm not mistaken, is the weekend before that. But for your science review, the 24th is the Friday, the 25th and the 26th. That's kind of the window when we'll have this live stream review, and I will get back to you guys with more details on that. So hopefully you don't have any questions from this, but if you do, let me know, leave a comment, let your teacher know, any of those things, send me an email, find me on Instagram, all of that good stuff. I will keep making videos whenever I have the time. I try to make most of them while my roommate's not here so that I'm not disturbing him. So I'll try and keep putting out more astronomy videos just because it's interesting stuff and I like it, and some of you have been waiting for the astronomy unit all year. But anything after you watch this video, anything following this is not going to be on the exam. Okay, so any science videos posted after this one are not going to be on your science exam. So the rest of it is going to be just fun stuff that you might enjoy learning about. But yeah, if you don't have any questions, I will see you guys in the next video. For the rest of this class, depending on how much time you have left, you can just start studying for any of these topics. See you soon.